Welcome everyone. Oh, no. Welcome everyone to today's discussion about the moon. Today we're going to talk about the moon being in Cancer or the fourth house. And we're here today with our wonderful panel, Rav Shahal, Kristin
Hi.
Fontana, Jordan Smith,
Hello.
Joel Malloy, and staciepazura. Thanks so much for coming together today as we continue on our workshop talking about the moon through each house and sign, and specifically how through each moon sign we can progressively nurture and empower ourselves, and how we'll when we look at the natal moon, how specifically we'll draw upon sources of emotional nurturing, where we'll feel most drawn to nurture ourselves and nurture others. And again, specifically, we're looking today at the moon in Cancer in the fourth house. And we can go to the next slide. And in terms of moon being in Cancer uh, or in the fourth house, let's start with Stacie then and talk about an animal friend that corresponds to the dynamics of internal nurturing, self security, where we're drawn to emotionally access, from my point of view, the mother father or that internal parent, so that we can move ourselves through deep emotional shifts. Let's start with the animals today. Let's start with our animal friends, and we can go from there. Go ahead, Stacie.
Okay. So I chose animal or elephant for Cancer. Partially because their societal structure is matriarchal, which means that the leader of the group is the oldest and most experienced female. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Also, because of how deeply emotional and emotionally expressive elephants are. Um, they have such a range of emotions, including, happiness, joy, anger, frustration. They can become jealous of each other for their ranks or this and that. They have a very strong sense of empathy. Um, for example, if there's a member of the family who has some kind of disabling condition, the other elephants will stay close and make sure that it gets food, make sure that it gets water. They'll, in one instance, I saw a show with one of the family members having a broken leg, and so the whole family just traveled at a very slow pace. They also have an altruistic capacity where they have been seen helping animals of other species who are in a dangerous situation. Also, other like if a particular elephant animal family, sorry, my brain is a little bit mush. If a particular elephant family is in some kind of trouble, other elephant families will come in to help. There's a video out there of a little calf that got stuck upside down in some kind of structure, and the lions were closing in, to take advantage of the situation, and they just could not free this little calf. And another family heard their distress, just came, out and rushed to the situation, freed up the family so that they could confront the lions, and the matriarch of that family just did this incredibly determined rescue. Um, elephants, savanna elephants really inspired me for this because their family groups are quite large. It includes, mostly females. The males will stay until they reach puberty, but once they reach puberty, they will start to spend less and less time with the herd, and eventually they separate themselves. You know, they'll revisit, but they then lead you know, kind of an Aries solitary life, although they will form like loose groups among males, but the females um they stay in the family for life. And in the savannah, their lives are so dictated by the rhythms, Cancer, of the seasons, and the extremities, Libra, of the dry season and the wet season and all the transitionary uh, phases. And so they spend a lot of time traveling, and a big driver of the travel is obviously food, but most importantly, water. It can get very hot, and an elephant can lose 10% of its the water in its body in a single day. Um, I don't want to take too much time, so I'm
Mm.
going to transition to forest elephants, which I also wanted to mention. Both of these are African species. The forest element, they keep smaller family units, I imagine because the density of the forest doesn't allow for large groups. Um, you know, with the exception of buys, which are water holes. And the thing that I really wanted to mention about the forest elephant is that they are key in creating hundreds of miles of pathways. It's almost like a highway where there's all these junctions that lead to these buys, these watering holes where all kinds of species will gather to get their, you know, their nutrients, their bath. They'll use it as a gathering place. Um, and the other thing about the elephant is that they eat mostly fruit. And so they will distribute seeds from the food that they eat or the fruit that they eat. And they will, that allows like trees to grow up to 3 miles away from the parent tree. And so they're just so integral in clearing the underbrush and creating these pathways that it allows the trees to get taller and store more carbon than even the Amazon. So it's a very important lung for the planet, and elephants are key in manifesting that. I know that somebody wanted to mention Ganesh, Lord Ganesh.
Hmm. Well, yeah, Stacey, I had mentioned that because when we were discussing this and you'd chosen the elephant, it just, Ganesha just popped into my head and I was like, and I'm not that familiar with Hindu gods. So I just Googled it and thought, okay, what does Ganesha represent? Because I know it's the head of an elephant and the feet of a human. And then it was interesting where I found out that the head represents the soul and the feet represents Maya, which is the illusion. And, we talk about evolutionary astrology and what Cancer represents, and it's the egocentric identity. I just found it fascinating how, oh, wow, here's the representation of the ego on this physical earth. So, like the elephant representing that's what I found really like coincidental. It was just beautiful. And I had never known that before. So that's why Ganesha popped into my mind.
And
Yeah.
having that moon in Cancer in terms of the family imprint and the family seed and what we draw upon in terms of emotional support and nurturing that absolutely reflected in what you guys have been sharing in terms of the elephant.
Mhm.
For having a moon in Cancer, I know very well how much having to also emotionally support yourself independent from from that family seed in terms of the tree that was 3 miles outside of the family and progressively through uh, as we internalize that emotional support or as we self nurture ourselves and we use that seed to promote our own self security to mature out independent from the family support or the family seed. How that all comes together.
Mm,
And I know through my work
yeah.
with children too, specifically, that one of the keys was helping them when their parents would leave. That was one of the most challenging experiences because of how much they draw, of course, upon the emotional support and how they feel secure and what they look for in terms of what will make them feel safe. And as soon as that parent was gone, you would have to find little ways to help them know that they're still safe and secure and that mom and dad will be back and and so on. And seeing that too, even as an adult, you have to find little tricks to help yourself secure yourself when you feel vulnerable or when you feel insecure, when you feel those emotional shifts and you want to feel safe or you want to feel secure and you want to feel nurturing, what you can do to progressively have that come from internal sources. And from my point of view, it's like becoming your own inner parent. That can be that polarity point to Capricorn.
Yeah.
I
I want
wanted
to
to add
mention one
something.
more
Oh,
thing. Oh, go
I just
ahead.
wanted to add something about Ganesh. And one of the reasons I too wanted to talk about Ganesha is that it is the Hindu god who is the remover of obstacles. And if you look at Cancer as an archetype, through the polarity, there's Capricorn, which can be the block or the resistance or the fear, which is all of our greatest obstacle, our own inner resistance, our own fear of what may or may not occur. And it's also considered the patron of new beginnings. As you remove an obstacle through an opposition, it becomes like a conjunction, as Jeffrey taught, that the polarity, the opposition, we have to confront that. We have to embrace that. This is how we evolve. This is how the Cancer archetype matures. And so that's why when we remove the obstacle, it can feel like a new beginning. And that is what this elephant or the Ganesh represents. I have a big statue of one in my house, so I know every time I look at it. It's a wonderful feeling to just to tune into the consciousness of this symbol and this energy field. So wanted to add that, and remembering that Aries is a cardinal archetype like Cancer, that's the new beginning, and the Cancer through the polarity to Capricorn, the obstacle that's removed. That's all I wanted to share on that.
There is one thing I forgot. I didn't want to leave out the Asian elephant. And the reason I feel they're important to mention for Cancer is that their homelands are subject to just rapid and extensive human development. And so they're losing access to their normal homelands. I mean, elephants have these memories that are designed to remember pathways to get to resources. And, now the humans are putting up fences and blocking them from, the places they've traveled for so long. And so they're having to learn how to adapt, which really tugged at my emotional heartstrings because I really, it's a real deep desire of mine that humans could coexist and think about the life experience of the animal. And so,
Stacie, I will. Yeah, go on.
no, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to mention that when my sister went to India a couple of years ago, she went to an elephant sanctuary. There's a lady I think in Pondicherry, where she rescues elephants that have been abused. Because in India, elephants are very prominent religiously in a lot of ways. And these elephants have been saved, and she has this huge land where these elephants that have been abused, she's nurturing them. And my sister went there to feed these elephants, and she said, she loves elephants. My sister loves elephants, and she had this food, to feed the elephants, and they're coming towards her. She said the sheer size of her freaked her out. So this elephant slowed down because it
Aw.
must have felt her fear. But then she took the courage, and went forward. And the elephant came forward and took the food very
Mm,
softly. So you talk about, the
yeah.
softness, that inner emotional softness that you get in Cancer, and how yes, there's polarity in this world where there's abuse, but there's also the opposite where people are coming forward to nurture these animals, and we just got to connect to those and find those. And there is healing. We just have to step into it and do our part. But I felt what you just said, and I just wanted to share that story. I will share the link to you for that sanctuary. Actually, you might be interested one day if you head that way to
Yes.
visit.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would love that. Yeah, so this planet is all of our home, and so that's kind of the last thought that I wanted to add.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stacie. That was amazing. There is a documentary on this woman, Rob. If you Google on even on YouTube, you can find these documentaries of these elephant sanctuaries in India and
Yeah.
what the people are doing there. Good example for
Yes.
the rest of the world.
Yeah.
All right, next slide. We need to take over for Jordan. So she needed to step away. The strengths and vulnerabilities in terms of what nurtures and empowers the Cancer archetype. I mean, I find the Cancer archetype as a cardinal energy. So I don't know, interesting in a sense because we can feel so vulnerable. And when we think of cardinal, we don't think of vulnerable. I think a lot of people think of Aries most often, but it makes sense when you think about it because if the cardinal archetype is initiating something new, it's new. So we are inherently going to feel vulnerable because we don't know where it's going, right? And so I went straight to the vulnerability there, but as an archetype, even Aries and Libra and Capricorn in their cardinal sense will feel the same vulnerability as Cancer does through this axis because of initiating something new. But I would love your thoughts, Joe. We're going to start with you because you are a Cancer sun. What nurtures you, Brother Joe?
I just flicked my microphone off. I knew this was coming my way. Uh, but you know what? This is like my instinct is to say, for rather than what nourishes me, it's what impacts on me. The the vulnerability of the Cancer archetype, and I've got a lot of Cancer energy in my chart and really relate to it, but it becomes very much my focus. Everything has to be an emotional exchange. I have to feel what you're saying. You need to feel what I'm saying. So the emotional connection nourishes me, but I love that shell, right? The kind of crustacean, the crab-like shell. It gives me the sense of safety and security. It's like the home that I can take with me, that I can withdraw into. Um, And I think it's that this is a curious balance. Maybe it's why the crab was picked as the symbol for this archetype because it doesn't go anywhere in a straight line. It's always sidestepping. I'm in the shell, I'm out of the shell. I'm exposing
Oh,
myself. I'm
that's good.
vulnerable. I'm a cardinal archetype, but I really want to hide in plain sight. And
Uh-huh.
as someone as a guy, right? As a man with all this emotional energy. Um, it's a challenge to fit into what I would have thought of as the traditional kind of uh, being a man in this world, which and then the world changes every so many years. So being a man in the world is what I learned when the world was like that yesterday, 10 years ago, 60 years ago. But emotional connection and sensitivity, where I don't have to take responsibility all the time for ensuring that the balance around me is held. If I have to think about maintaining balance, then it can put me onto a little bit of a hyper alert. I'm having to look all around me. So I like to create an environment that extends out around me that provides that soft, nourishing feeling. But the risk is it can become isolating and things can be so tranquil that I just fall asleep. Nothing's going on in my life, but I feel safe. And I think it's this really funny thing being a crab because I want to be get my pincers out. I want to feel safe, but I need to step outside that shell. I've outgrown this shell. I can see why they have these hermit crabs. Do you know these hermit crabs? I don't know, the shape on the picture on the screen is like a proper crabby crab as I think of it. That's not
Yeah.
the proper Linnaean name for them, but these hermit crabs that seem to embody, as they hold the archetype of being a crab and relating to Cancer, but they have to move to a new home, a new shell, when they've outgrown the one they have. And I think in the same way, as we move through life and we learn, hopefully, about our self-nurturing from the mother or father, but the maternal influence in our home life, then we learn these ways of nourishing ourselves, but they have to evolve because we grow from being a toddler to whatever the next stage of the child, to an older child, to going, walking to school on our own, walking ourselves home, becoming teenagers. Maybe we go on a bus, we go further away. And the structures that we create or believe we've created become things that we outgrow. So we have to, if you relate to this Cancer energy in your chart, your sun or your moon, there's just lots of planets there, or maybe on your ascendant, then this probably speaks to you that you need to be growing. Your shell needs to be growing. The home needs to be growing. And the way to do that is through challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could
So, oh, go ahead.
Um, I just briefly wanted to, when I look at the axis, I kind of think of the emotional process itself, where it can Aries be important to withdraw Cancer from social interaction, Libra, in order to be with the emotion, to sit with it, to feel it, not to know where it's going, because it doesn't always tell you where it's going, and it takes its own amount of time. And we could look at the symbols and try to figure out what's going on, but you can't be cerebral. The process doesn't allow for cerebral resolution. You have to feel it, in part because it's important to helping you identify the causes of what has triggered an emotion, but also, well, and therefore, self-knowledge and how to grow, but also to deeply know the human experience so that we can relate with others, and so that that give and take, and so that we can hear others' realities as it exists for them. And there is a point where the social dialogue is very helpful for emotional processing, but there is that part in the phase where it really requires you to go within yourself and let it be.
So yeah,
Stacie,
definitely. Do you have a fourth house
yeah,
Pluto, Stacie?
I do. I
Okay,
know this.
so we have Joe with his sun in Cancer and a few other things. Deva's got moon in Cancer. Stacie's got a fourth house Pluto. I have Cancer rising. Rob, do you have anything in the fourth?
I have Mars in Cancer.
There you go. Mars and Cancer. I had forgotten that. Wow, we have prominent Cancer energies. And of course, we are all here to do the inner work and to help others do the same. And it's uncomfortable. And Timothy Halloran, in his lecture on the 12th house at our recent conference, said something, and I had to write it down. He said, whether relative or connected with the water, which of course Cancer is part of the water triad and trinity. Water feels what others cannot see or know. Wow. So, right, you
Absolutely.
can't use your mind with it. You can't see it. You're feeling it all. And anybody with a lot of water in their chart, a fourth house Pluto, a moon in Cancer, the sun in Cancer in the 12th, the Cancer rising, a Mars in Cancer, all of us, we know this for ourselves firsthand. So anybody listening who has prominent fourth house or has prominent Cancer signatures, it is a blessing to actually feel what others cannot see and know. And it's a responsibility that we all have to evolve our inner home, and also to help others when we're doing this work to do the same. So what nurtures you guys? I want to know. I want to hear it. Just come on. I know Joe loves baths, and he talked about that before. He loves his baths.
Well, it's Forcer, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, we got to have some fun with this topic, because it is. Dava, what nurtures you now? I probably could say a few things. Come on.
I
Tell the
feel
world.
I feel most at home where I'm in quiet spaces where I can really tune into any given emotion that I'm feeling and to feel safe with whatever's coming up. And so it's not a cerebral process to where it's more nurturing through listening to my emotions and listening to what my emotional body is needing and attending to myself. That's the feeling that I draw upon the most, actually, to help myself through difficult situations. And what I feel nourished by is really tuning into any given emotion and giving myself the time and space to attend to it. And that usually is in quiet times out in nature with animals. So I can then give that same kind of universal mother energy back to others. So it's like I have to have that space for myself and really quiet the mind, whether it's through a walk in nature or spending time with a beloved pet. And then I feel safe with what's happening on the inside, so I can then give that back.
Great. Stacie?
Oh, like Joe says, water head to toe. I love a good bath. And the other just no fail thing for me is snuggling under a blanket, a heated blanket, with my Great Dane, with his head nestled right here. He's got the
Oh.
perfect padding on the top of his head where you kiss it, and it's just, oh, it is just, oh, my happy place. And of course, just, being at home with my animal family. So for me, that's really nurture. And of course, nature. Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah.
Rob?
I was just thinking, what does nurture me? The first thought when you asked the question for me was a good book. Sitting down with a good book and learning. And I've just realized my fourth house cusp is Jupiter. Sorry, Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. And my 10th house is Gemini, which rules my Mars in Cancer because it's in the same house. And when I'm going to use the word comfort. I do step away from the world, but I will step into my own world. And it's always, always non-fiction books, knowledge about the world, growth, civilization, like, the amount of books I do have. And I love learning. And it's always been a comfort. Just just looking at how the world has come about. It's funny because I'm like, it's nothing like, yes, I like a good cup of tea, I like a good movie on the sofa and stuff, but in terms of somebody saying to me, what will nurture you today? I like, if I'm on holiday from work, I will have a pile of books that I will take with me everywhere. Whether I read them all is a different story, but the intention is I will always be reading every single day. It just provides me with, I don't know what it is, some sort of nourishing that I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm developing, but yeah, I'm such a bookworm. That's always been nurturing to me. So yeah, I would actually say my books.
Awesome. What empowers you all? Let's share with the listeners, because as souls on this evolutionary journey, we have to dig inside ourselves, right? Access the courage to take a step or to take a leap, to try something new. And when we're vulnerable, we don't always feel that way. Joe, you want to crawl back under that shell. And I love the sidestepping analogy. That was awesome. And I can surely relate to that. It's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back reality for the cardinal archetypes, as we all know. And that step back is a time for receptivity to receive nourishment for ourselves. But inevitably, we do need to know how to empower ourselves. So how do you empower yourself, Joe?
Well, I think I started with water last time, didn't I? What nourishes me, or you'd said we know you like water, and it's just I do. So if I stay with elements, the element that empowers me is fire.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like a fire for me, a
Yeah.
fire, whether it's inside a stove or outside, and just putting my hands, this will sound crazy until you know you can do it, putting your hands through the flames of a friendly fire and
Mm.
bringing it into your body. It's crazy, but it's just
It's ancient. It's ancient.
Isn't it ancient? You know, maybe before we had language, we had fire.
Mm,
Um,
Mm.
yeah.
so the things that I do that empower me, and I'm going to relate this to my whole kind of Cancerian nature. Something that inflates me, makes me feel good about myself, that empowers me, is when I know that I've been doing something to help other people,
Mm.
but not in a self-sacrificing kind of way. You know, it's like there's one cream cake left on the plate, and I think, oh, there is someone else in the room, so I've got to say, oh, would you like this last cake? And I smile secretly, but not too secretly, wishing they're going to say, "Oh no, no, I'm full, thank you. I'm very British, you know. You have it."
Yeah.
And before we get into that game of "No, I don't want it, you have it," I'd say, "Yeah," without doing anything, you know, this, sacrificing, giving away what I can't give away. But when I know that, and so maybe that's that bit about balance. When I know there's balance in what I do, but what I've done is to give and help someone else,
Yeah. Social
making
food.
myself less. You know, it's like what they do with that is up to them, but it's somewhere in the connection, having seen a need and helped someone to meet a need. Um, it's a very social thing, like the elephants. I never imagined cancer as an elephant until we started talking about this, and I thought it's just the mother principle in all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I love that you just use that word,
Yeah,
right? Because the cancer naturally wants to nurture others, but it first needs to know how to nurture itself. But that
exactly.
feedback from other people is so important to say, wow, that feels really good. And sometimes when we can take the focus off of our own inner ache, if we're going through something really challenging and just step away and help someone else, that it's an amazing balancing energy that happens. I remember asking Jeffrey when he was teaching, like, you know, when you've gone through really difficult times in your life, like really difficult times in your life, and there's been some, you know, there's times, you know, that he had to teach a class or do a reading under extremely difficult circumstances, and that's what he would say. Fourth house moon, I would just step away from whatever was going, and I would help that person, and had a way of just putting things back into balance and giving me the energy that I needed to keep going with whatever I was enduring at that time. So yeah, that was a wonderful example. Dava, what about you?
Right, in terms of what I feel empowered by, it's seeing that, going back to that mother principle, that that's able to stay centered and balanced in terms of whatever personal processing or whatever personal growth I've gone through, that by seeing that that's in some way been given back to others, specifically through working with children and being able to see them help develop their self-confidence, and seeing how that came through my own ability to nurture myself and to step away. When you're dealing with children, same thing, you can't stay centered on yourself, you have to respond to an immediate need. There's a this going on over there that I need to attend to, and it pulls you out of yourself
Totally.
so that you can see that reflected back. And that's been very empowering to use that as a measure, or to see that in terms of the mother principle.
Excellent. Yeah. Stace?
Um, what's empowering to me is just having the courage, which is often experienced as taking the risk of being myself. I have a fourth house Pluto in Libra, and I can my self-image, I kind of relate to that as I'm a very quirky person. I'm full of contradictions and inconsistencies, and I don't do things like everyone else does. And sometimes it's not accepted in the social sphere or by others, and sometimes it is. And what empowers me is having developed a measure of just self-love and self-confidence that I that it just really does empower me just to be myself, take it or leave it.
Excellent. That's so good. That's a lesson for every soul on the planet. Right?
Yeah.
Not looking to other people to validate who you are, to feel whole into ourselves. This is a Cancer of teaching, learning to cultivate that inner sense of emotional security so you do feel whole and thus holy, ultimately created by God, goddess, and not looking to the Libra outside of yourself for validation, for feedback. So excellent example, excellent EA example. And Rob?
It's something similar to actually a little bit of what Joe has said, all Dava and Stacie. For me, it's been being able to be vulnerable, first of all. I am a Capricorn moon, so my growth is in that vulnerability and having strength in that vulnerability. What's empowered me in my life to date, I feel it's been having the courage to step into the world to do this work. For me, it's been very much about having the confidence and courage to say to the world, I am an evolutionary astrologer. In the past, it would have been, yes, it's just a side thing I'm doing, but EA empowers me every day in my life. It's just given me a tool that allows me to be authentic to my core essence. And I am also a Pluto and Libra generation. So, getting that balance right in giving and receiving and maybe following what other people are saying is the right thing to do. I'm still stepping into the emotional waters of having the strength to be unique. This is my path, this is my journey, this is my soul journey. So what's empowering for me is being able to have the courage to take that one step at a time approach. And it's that cardinal archetype, we spoke about in terms of the energies of Cancer. You do that 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it is still a step forward. You may feel like you're going back, but you're still moving forward. And yeah, for me, it's been that just the courage um, in my life that's come up for me. The obstacles I've had to maneuver through, which I
I
still
just
maneuver through.
I have this visual
Yeah.
of someone trying to scale a mountain and they never go straight up, right? They have to follow the grooves in the side of the mountain, the face of the mountain. And it's that
Yeah.
path that you find, you come down, you come back up, you go side, as Joe says. So it's not a direct path from A to B. We have to go down and side and then up and over. And we're all learning that there is ultimate strength in that vulnerability. That is an EA teaching, the root of the EA teaching to get into the water. We have to allow ourselves to get in, to feel everything. And then we experience our own strength, especially when the waters really start to move. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
We should move on. We could talk about this all day.
All day.
It feels good, doesn't it? It feels good to know that what we need to empower ourselves are hearing other people and their own experiences. It reminds us all that it's just part of the human condition and the soul's evolution. That's the first water sign in the zodiac. It's the river that finds its way back to the sea. That's Cancer. All right, Deva, take it.
Yeah, I felt that a good example for Moon in Cancer is Lahiri Mayashaya. And while I don't know too much about his life, what I do know from my point of view is very reflective of a Moon in Cancer and being in the second house in terms of how he felt drawn to nurture himself and also to nurture others. So he's starting with his evolutionary state guru or avatar. He's got Pluto in Aries in the 11th house, and he's also got South Node in Aries in the 12th house, and that Moon in Cancer in the second house. And from my understanding, one of his deepest teachings is how to nurture an emotionally balanced life, so that no matter what position you hold in the world, whether it's filled with worldly responsibilities, or family, that you keep everything in balance, or emotionally in tune. Seeing that moon in Cancer in the second house, and seeing that North Node being in Libra in the sixth house, to always make it a fine tuning point, or to always nurture those things that bring the most emotional harmony, so that there's an ability to stay balanced and emotionally intact, or integrated in the world, no matter what your position. Seeing that Pluto in the 11th house, coming into the life very much structured, or desiring to liberate, to decondition, and to pull apart everything that the soul has been conditioned by. And from what I understand, when he met Babaji, who was his guru, one of his deepest teachings was to come back into emotional tune, or to come back into emotional balance with himself, through always keeping harmony, or always keeping that, looking at that North Node being in Libra in the sixth house. Again, always keeping things in a state of balance. And from what I understand of his life too, that one of the ways he would teach, or when he would come through, is when things became too emotionally overwhelming, or too dominant, seeing that South Node in Aries in the 12th. And one of my favorite stories of him is when there was a disciple that was desiring to come to him because of a true need. There was crisis, and he needed to go see his guru. And his employer, he wasn't giving him the time off to do that. He was being very strict, and he was being, you need to come. And then he appeared, and he said, you are being too you are being too harsh with your employee. And by showing up that way, it created a seed for both. I think the employer also ultimately became his disciple, in terms of emotional receptivity, and always keeping things in balance. When things became too harsh, he would always appear as a way of gentle but firm chastisement. Always keeping things, seeing that moon in Cancer, always keeping that emotional receptivity to a need, or to a legitimate need of whoever was coming to him for whatever reason. And I saw that as being a way of accessing to that internal mother principle of nurturing through that fine tuning, or always appearing when things have become too dominant, or too soft. Always keeping that ability to keep, Kristin, I know you describe Libra as that a fine tuning, or
Tuning fork.
yeah.
Tuning.
And go ahead.
Oh, the tuning fork, yeah.
Tuning fork. So he would always come when things needed that fine tuning, and that being a way to nurture, and always keeping a balance, and also priorities. That it's a way of saying that that renouncement would come through inner reunification with spirit, not denouncing your outward responsibilities, not by disappearing from the world. And I don't have any responsibility here. Seeing that Mercury, or seeing that Mars in Capricorn conjunct Neptune, and seeing that North Node being in the sixth. So as a way of saying that you hold both positions equally in the world. One doesn't negate the other, and in that way, liberating from this idea that unification, or the life of a renunciate, is by denouncing the outside, and the responsibilities that one would naturally hold. But again, coming back to creating balance, equality, and nurturing oneself through keeping that inner equilibrium, or keeping that inner balance.
That was excellent. I definitely want to share a favorite Lahiri story from Autobiography of a Yogi. And you can see that the South Node and Pluto are forming a culminating conjunction. This transit South Node moves clockwise, and Pluto's moving counterclockwise. They're not moving when he's born, but they're culminating. You got the 11th and 12th house. You look to Mars as the ruler being in a new phase with Neptune in the 9th house, the role he played as guru for so many. But there was one subconscious, unconscious desire left in his soul. And when he visited with Babaji in the Himalayas in a cave where he spent many, many years in his prior life, and Babaji helped him remember that. So this secret, I don't know, I guess, I don't know if secret's it, subconscious wish was, you once expressed a desire to enjoy the beauties of a palace. Our master is now satisfying your wish, thus freeing you from the last bond of your karma. I mean, look at how deliberate that is in the chart. The last bond of the karma. So the soul's evolution comes by eliminating all separating desires until there's only one desire left. And while it may not have been conscious, it was hidden in his subconscious. There was this Leo desire to experience the beauties of the palace. And you look at Saturn and Leo in the 4th house, trining Pluto in the 11th, Venus, the ruler of the North Node in Libra, a sun in Libra in the 5th, right? Venus is in Leo. The magnificent palace will be the scene of your initiation tonight into Kriya Yoga. This is Babaji speaking. And this guide took him to this palace that just materialized out of thin air. Before us stood a vast palace of dazzling gold, ornamented with countless jewels set amid landscaped gardens, reflected in tranquil pools, a spectacle of unparalleled grandeur. Towering archways were intricately inlaid with great diamonds, sapphires, and emeralds. Men of angelic countenance were stationed by gates, redly resplendent with rubies. And he goes on and on. I highly recommend people read Materializing a Palace in the Himalayas in the Autobiography of a Yogi. And there's also a chapter about Lahiri and more about his life. But, you know, this is an important story. I mean, I was just stunned by this, because you think somebody this evolved would not care about the beauties of a palace, but it was really more about what the creator was capable of creating, right? Like just all that manifested in a Leo way. I think he was just wanting to experience that. And once he had this experience, this palace just disappears, and there's nothing left but to return. So even someone like Lahiri, we talk about, as souls, we continue to come back until all of these desires have been extinguished, with only the desire left to return to God. So even Lahiri, at a 3rd stage, spiritual state of evolution, is having this wish and this desire embedded in his subconscious. And anyway, it's a beautiful chapter, and you can see it so clearly depicted in his chart here.
One thing I kind of wanted to kind of retouch upon something Deva already mentioned, which is that Babaji waited until Lahiri was, I think, 33 years old,
33,
married,
yeah.
married, 2 kids, I think, had his job, all his life responsibilities. And Babaji told him there was a very deep purpose in waiting for that, because his destiny was to go back into the world, but not to be of it, and to be an example to others, that it doesn't matter what your outside occupation is. It is still possible to be centered in God. And he also was very big on uh, teaching his disciples about to detach from the attachment to form. So he would sometimes do, miracles that involve disappearing acts. He'd be in front of you and he'd disappear. And of course, after he died, he resurrected to a few choice people to help them grasp that, there's nothing to grieve. This is just a form, but I'm still here in your spiritual eye.
I love how Babaji talked to him about his past and all these times in Lahiri's past that he was there, invisible and present for him, yet you could not see my form. I've never left you. I have always been with you. So I have chills thinking about this. Is this not a Cancer teaching for us all, right? When we feel alone, we are not alone. As we are calling in the masters or calling in spirit, and we may not see them, but the Cancer energy we can feel them if we're honest with that energy and allow it to happen. Thank you for that, Stacie. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Kristin, I just want to add one other thing because Deva, you do mention in the Cancer moon archetype in your book, and I'm going to quote you because you actually mentioned his Lahiri Messiah and his natal moon placement, and something that he had said is he had said that always remember that you belong to no one and no one belongs to you. And it's, that's that whole Cancer archetype of inner security, right? Self inner security, exuding into the outer world. And, that moon in his second house is ruled by Gemini. So his words continue to this day, empower people, just have strength, just listen to these stories, just reading Autobiography of a Yogi. Don't you find yourself just sitting there, just giggling away and laughing at the humor that he has? I'm not going to say he has. And it's, he does mention that you don't need me physically present. Look at my picture. I'm there with you. You think of me, I am there. And it's that presence that, he exudes to this day in the world, and how his teachings, his message continues to grow. And I just feel it will grow even further over the next so many years. But no, he's just a wonderful, just looking at this picture right now, we were talking earlier before recording, just makes me giggle. Like I can't even look at the picture because I just want to start laughing.
Yeah.
It's just that fun Leo, his fourth house is ruled by Leo. He's just got that very childish kind of essence to him about life. What we shouldn't be taking it seriously. Yes, there's soul growth, but so what? We're evolving forwards, and yeah, just do what you need to do from a place of inner self-security.
Isn't this picture the only time he allowed his form to be photographed?
Yep. Every time someone tried to take his picture, there was nothing. Yeah, Stacie. That's right. And people were just like, what? I just took your picture and there's nothing. That's so cool. Again, back to this lesson around non-attachment. Non-attachment, attachment is Libra. And for sure the Cancer archetype within it. And attachment is the thief of joy, as it is said. It is attachment and expectation become the greatest, pain for us all when those expectations are not met in relationships, etc. That creates the greatest suffering. And through the inconjunct to Pisces 12th house, the disillusionment that we have when we project certain things onto others or onto partners, and then those needs do not get met. We must fulfill those within ourselves and expect and attach to nothing.
Yeah. Kristin, just an interesting thing I've just noticed. His Mars is 21 degrees Capricorn. Isn't Mars today at 22 degrees Cancer?
It is right around there.
I'm pretty sure it is. So there's a Mars opposition happening in his chart,
I think we're going to look at the full moon next, so that will be in there. Sure.
19
always a message.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Sorry,
19.
Joe?
It's 19 today.
19 today.
19 today. Okay. I'm thinking of the full moon, I think, at 22. I think that's what it is. But yeah, building up to it. So interesting we speak of this great avatar.
Do we move on, or does anybody want to add anything more?
I kind of wanted to mention that one other very special thing about Lahiri is that I don't know how to pronounce his last name very well. Mahashaya or Maha?
Mahas Mahasaya.
Okay, Mahasaya. Okay. I've heard other pronunciations, and so I got confused.
Yeah.
But something very special about him is that at the time, it was very rare, but he would attract disciples of all kind of religious backgrounds, and he would
Yeah.
continue them to continue their practice according to their faith because it didn't make any difference. The Kriya Yoga was just, it was a tool to use in conjunction with these other devotional methods. And so, and in addition to that, he did not pay any real attention to caste. You know, he embraced all status. So,
Yeah.
and that wasn't very common at the time.
Right. 7 paths, 7 chakras, 7 teachers, many paths that lead to one. And even at Lake Shrine, where Yogananda, there's a chapel there and an SRF, I guess, space there for you to worship. There's a lake in Santa Monica, really near PCH. And it's incredible. When I lived in Southern California, I used to go there to visit it. And around this lake are the 7 different religious teachings, Hindu, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, etc. And it's essentially about all of us here in this circle and this around this body of water. All paths lead to one, essentially is what that teaching is about. And it's so powerful for anybody who just goes to visit there to have that symbol, to have that message, to have that picture out in the middle of nature, surrounded by trees, really close to the ocean. It's really, an incredible energy field to be a part of. So I love that, Stacie, you brought that up, and that is a wonder. There's no judgment, right? Let's just find your way back to God. And if this is your path, Kriya Yoga can help you get there.
Mm.
All right, we should move on. Rob, you want to start this?
I was like, I haven't even looked at the full moon today. Right, yes, I can start this. So Aries full moon occurs on the 17th of October, which is next week. And it's a full moon in Aries Libra. And so when I first look at any full moon chart, for me, it's always about, accumulation, a closing cycle that's coming up. And with full moons, always it's an opposition between the sun and the moon. And here we have it in Aries, and then Libra. And I always look at this as me versus you. So the I and the other. And so here we have the moon in Aries conjunct Chiron. That's the first thing I notice. And it's, I feel this particular full moon is very much pointing us towards healing the self, how we have to do the work to heal ourselves before we can go out and help others, let's just say, out into the world. With the sun being in Libra, the ruler is that Venus at 29 degrees of Scorpio. So that's pointing for me towards, the relationships that we have, where, power dynamics can come into play, where we're looking at where we're actually, possibly being manipulated or manipulating others, because we can do both. We talk essentially about how others can manipulate us, but we also have to look back at ourselves as to where maybe we're manipulating a situation. So I feel this particular full moon is asking us to close cycles before that Pluto in Capricorn moves back into Aquarius. That Venus in Scorpio has been ruled by that Pluto in Capricorn, which will have gone direct just a week before. So we're in a final kind of 6-week stage of closing patterns of cycles of development that don't serve our soul's growth. So this is how I kind of looked at this full moon when I looked at it a bit earlier. But yeah, so that's what I see with this.
I think of Ganesh, I think of soul and Maya,
Yes.
really. When I see this, of course, I see a full moon like this squaring Mars in Cancer, and my stomach just starts to rumble.
Mm.
What's it going to be? All of our Cancer energy, we feel all these lunar cycles. For anybody listening who has prominent Cancer energy, you feel the new moon, the full moon, and those eclipses more than anybody, more intimately, I would say, oftentimes. And it can be incredibly empowering. It can also bring you to your knees. It can be both. But what I'm super happy to see, or grateful to see, that there's plenty of energy to pull from. There is a kite pattern. It's hard to see clearly, but Pluto is at the top of the kite, the soul, okay, Ganesh, the soul, the head, with the wings being Venus, sextile to Venus in Scorpio, which is ruled by that Pluto on one side, and Neptune, the other wing of this kite on the other. And wow, how powerful this is to see Mars at the tail of the kite. Turn it around, turn the chart around. There's not a right side up or upside down or higher, lower when you're looking at the wheel. You just turn that kite around and draw this on a piece of paper, plot it in your chart. Mars in Cancer is at the tail of this kite, right? It is the places where we're feeling vulnerable, an opportunity through the wings of Neptune and Venus. Neptune is a higher octave of Venus, right? And Neptune can connect to our expectations and releasing those, surrendering those. And Neptune is about evolving to new spiritual heights, healing the past, and allowing for an openness to connect to spirit, to the gurus that we've been talking about. And so Pluto has an opportunity to be at the tip of this kite for us to become less weighted down by the world, right? Having a place where we can return to feel safe and secure and held by something more eternal and unconditional. The kite is there. The full moon will throw us into our insecurities. Will have us, it may potentially feel like we're dog paddling out in the middle of the sea, potentially. And yet this kite is a promise of what else can happen when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We surrender to what scares us. We surrender to the fear. We surrender to the vulnerabilities and the insecurities. When you get into the river and you surrender and there's nothing on you, you float. If you come in with all sorts of things strapped to your body, clothes, worries, fears, resistance, you can drown for sure. But when you release them, you will float. And I see this as an opportunity, not only to float, but to fly.
Mm.
Kristin, you say it so beautifully. You say it so beautifully.
Deva, Joe.
Yeah. Uh,
Absorbing.
coming back to water, right? We've been through a season of powerful transitions, eclipses, all sorts of things, and it can build this apprehension, like what's next? No matter how wonderful it looks or how awesome it is, how am I going to manage it? And coming back to this thing about water, so we have the moon, water in Aries, we have Mars, that same kind of Aries energy in Cancer. And the words that are in my mind are that the water knows the way, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I am stealing this from a really non-astrological movie, but the water knows the way. And if you think about it, I was thinking just about saying, the river knows which way to go. But even the rain, no one tells the rain. It always comes down and it hits the mountain and it rolls down the mountain and it gathers together and it knows which way to go. You don't need to tell the water. And in the same way, we're same way, a similar way, if I compare analogies, we talk about consciousness as being like water. in that it has no form until you pour it into something. And here we have water, emotions being poured into a particular shape, as we can see by the chart. And I just want to say, the key might just be to step back from whatever has been challenging you, and what creates the fear of what's coming next, and come to your inner place, connect with your emotions, and if you've been thinking, as we were talking earlier, about what nourishes you, go to the place that nourishes you, so you connect with your own relationship with your own moon identity, and it will carry you. What nourishes you carries you. The water knows the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Deva?
And in terms of really drawing upon what you guys are saying, and from my point of view, it's like a potentially through the stress finding one's wings.
Yeah.
And looking at that North Node being in Aries and the Moon in Aries, um, gosh, seeing that Sun in Libra and the South and that South Node, it's like a new way to fly. And as you guys were saying, to trust in what comes from surrendering to those waters and having that be the lead point, and from there take flight.
Stace, you want to add anything?
I had this insight that I really wanted to share. It has flown out of my brain, and I can't seem to recall it. But um, so I'll just try and kind of just start talking and see if it comes to me. I don't know if it's going to, but I guess in the full moon, I'm seeing that, we're going to have peak awareness of some kind of prioritized emotion within ourselves that will induce a need to initiate some kind of new direction or action, and which that moon is forming a last quarter square to the Mars in Cancer. And so this is going to require the construction, like a construction process, relative to throwing off something from the past that has been holding you back. Um, some kind of experimentation to bring in something new. To the self and the expression of the self. And, the Mars in Cancer is also forming a square to the Sun in Libra, which is a disseminating phase. And so there's a need um, to find a way to share whatever that is that's being developed and discovered about the self and innovated about the self, whatever new is unfolding. I know this is very conceptual, so forgive me, but it needs to be done in a way that's maybe gentle, that's safe for people, and that can be grasped. The disseminating phase, we're sensitive to norms and what people can take in, and so that kind of energy. And I just can't remember what I wanted to say, so I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Stacie, just to add to what you just said, wouldn't that just be take the action that's needed, even if you don't know where it's going at
For
this point,
sure.
from what
For
you,
sure.
yeah,
Yes, yes. Security in the unknown, the
yeah,
courage to act in the
courage,
unknown.
yeah, yeah, you said that beautifully as well.
I have a really relevant quote about the river. I love The Water Knows the Way. What movie was that? By the way, Joe.
Okay, it's I can't remember which
I
one it
haven't
was,
heard.
but it's one of the underworld vampire werewolf
Oh,
movies.
okay. Didn't see that one. But I do have a wonderful river passage here, just for us all to think about under this full moon. Life can be heavy, especially if you try to carry it all at once. So practice the art of catch and release. What I mean by this is knowing the things to keep and what things to release. You can't carry all things. You decide what is yours to hold and you let the rest go. Oftentimes, the good things in your life are lighter anyway, so there is more room for them. Remember to have gratitude for the things that are good in your life. When you focus on the good does get better. Make room for that. Do we move to the next slide? Deva, you want to wrap this with a bow?
Yeah, it's what the quote by Lahiri Mayashaya. Always remember that you belong to no one and no one belongs to you. And from my understanding, that connects to the Cancer archetype in terms of not attaching to anything earthly, no matter how much emotional support is given, but rather to connect through the water trine, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, to really nurture yourself through a connection to spirit, whatever brings you that sense of higher purpose, connects you to the eternal, and helps you find that place of internal security and to connect to the eternal mother that will always be there no matter what. And to in that way releasing any emotional attachments that you have with the external world. And from my point of view, it's like remembering that your only belonging is to that of spirit.
We are all one with the sea.
Yeah. Universal family in the end.
Little bubbles bouncing around, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that was wonderful. And for those of you listening who do not have Deva's book on the moon, it is fantastic and is a wonderful resource to utilize as you are evolving through this work of evolutionary astrology and working through the Pluto book, the Pluto material, the moon and its nodes. Deva addresses evolutionary states in here, and it's just an excellent read and support in your own lives personally and working with clients as well. So it was so lovely to join all my Cancer friends here, my feeling friends, Rob and Deva and Joe and Stacie. Much love to you all and to all of you. Namaste.
Namaste. Lots of love.
Namaste.